and back to what little production value I had. Kept you waiting, huh? I hope you guys don't mind all the playthroughs filling up the feed. As a game dev, I know just how useful playthrough footage is. I remember just learning a lot from watching one of my friends who doesn't really play video games struggle to get through the last level. So recording and sharing my playthrough is just all something I can do to try to help out my fellow game devs. And for any of you out there thinking about getting into game dev, I highly recommend sharing your game, no matter how much of a prototype it is, and watching someone play. The first few times I watched someone play through one of my games were absolutely excruciating experiences. I felt so bad about what I'd made and what someone was playing, but I learned a whole lot and I was able to improve the game because of it. That's not so subtle a way to ask any of you brave viewers out there to please play my demo. You don't have to record it, but any and all feedback is great. If you don't give me feedback, I might just release a shit game. Anyway, enough of this unusually long intro. Welcome to devlog number 9. Last episode we did a bit of time traveling and I gave you a tour of the finished demo. But how did we get there? I didn't produce the inspiration log to give up my weekend editing time. Oh no. So this week I'm fixing the timeline and we're going back to the development leading up to the demo release. Now here's a peek into the method of my madness. But when a deadline is approaching, I make a triage list. No one is dying, thank God. But I find that deciding what's a priority and what's not is invaluable for figuring out what to do in limited time and helps me make peace with what I don't accomplish. 2 episodes earlier, I talked about my big-brained invention of a 4-way height blend, but left off after creating the 3D model for the quarry section. Now, any of you astute viewers out there can probably put 2 and 2 together and realize that, well, I'm just gonna take a good thing and run with it. And you'd be right, but not only did I put that 4-way height blend on the quarry blocks, I put it on the cliffs and tower tunnel as well. Now, for those of you out there who look at my tweets, you might have seen me shitposting about how I'm going to light my level. After all, there's barely any sky access. Well, I took the lighting conundrum and, just like Cortez upon landing in the New World, I burned my ships. I deleted the skybox and the skylight, and the level was plunged into primordial darkness. I had 2 easy avenues of solution. 1. I made the glowing material on the quarry blocks affect the level lighting, step in the right direction, and it lit up the completely pitch black interior of the quarry blocks. 2. I slapped a giant, and I do mean giant, light at the top of the hole. Now, this isn't a permanent solution because, well, there's gonna be more level up there eventually, so I can't just have a light shining ex nihilo forever, but it's good enough for now. That lit up most of the map, but I still had a bit to light up. I tested out the position, radius, and raw intensity I'd need for a point light to light up the remaining area. Then I had to make it look natural. As much as I'd like to have a floating light with no corresponding object light up the area, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I rapidly modeled a good enough gigantic heart, tossed on some arms to hold it in place, did some quick texture and vertex painting, and bam, natural source of light. Now that I had the main part done, I just needed a way to teach new players how to play, the tutorial zone. As I said last week, I believe an in-game tutorial is a must, especially for a demo, because no one is going to read the controls. Also, for the type of game I want Sick Transit to be, I knew I needed to design the tutorial so that way any experienced player can just skip it using a movement technique an experienced player would know. I already have a general order of how I introduce things. Walking, jumping, crouching, etc. And finally, I suggest how to grapple. I want you to learn that via experimentation. So I had a general blueprint of what I needed shape-wise. I went about designing the area. I cracked open good old Blender, then got to work modeling a basic shape. Next I made a texture atlas, so that way I could texture the area. Now I hear some of you asking, what's a texture atlas? It's just a big old image with a bunch of different textures on it. It's more performant than slapping a whole bunch of different materials on one mesh for reasons that I won't cover here. And as an added benefit, what I saw in Blender is exactly how it looks in UE4. After that, I made a whole bunch of boxes that I figured I could use in the tutorial area. And I used the same texture atlas for them as the tutorial area itself. So actual development was pretty damned quick, and they also all looked like they belonged in there. And finally, the day before the demo was set to be released, I began working on the respawn thingamajig. As some of you may remember, I just had a floating orb previously. Now I wanted something a little more unique. After all, dem arms, that heart. I've got an idea of the look I'm going for. and I tried whipping something together in Blender, but what I wanted was just gonna take too much time, so I gave up. No, not permanently, but just for the time being. An important part of the triage method is knowing when you've bitten off something more than you can chew, and subbing out for something you can do at that time. Instead of a super cool model, you get a floppy disk. Yeah, I actually remember using these bad boys growing up. They're great. I find it a little funny that they've become the icon for saving, even though they've largely been out of use for decades now. God, I'm getting old. And that was all the time I had. Of course, there was a bunch of other stuff I just didn't hit on the triage list. I wanted Escape to close the pause menu if it's open. I wanted custom keybinds. I wanted you to respawn by just holding down R. And I wanted a bunch of other stuff. But I just didn't get to them in time. And I'm okay with that. After all, there's always next time. Now, before I wrap this up, I'd like to personally thank NODEV Crab. He's recording and uploading all of his playthroughs of every single demo submitted. His videos have a higher production value than the playthroughs I did, and he's extremely thorough in presenting each game as accurately as possible. He recorded my game 7 times in order to get the audio balancing just right, and I really appreciate that, and I know it's a lot of work. So please, check him out. Check out his videos. They're great. There's a link in the description. And that's it for this week. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day. If you like the video, please give it a like. And if you want to follow along with development, please subscribe. As always, the comment section is open and I'd love to hear from you. I'm also on Twitter. If you like the bread and want to see it when I actually bake it, you can follow me there. And in case you couldn't tell, there's a new demo out now. You can download it from the itch page in the description. I also have a link to all the other games submitted to Demo Day 44, the jam I submitted Sick Transit to. There's a whole bunch of great stuff there, some with years of development, others with just months. If you ever wanted to help out a small indie game developer without having to pay money, playing a demo and giving feedback is the best way to help. There's also some really fun games in there. Why not take a look? Okay, enough game dev talk. Bread time. So, not as good as last week's. However, there's still, still good bread. And I have some thoughts about that. It's actually, I have two thoughts. One, I'm just using regular bread flour instead of high gluten flour, and I think, if I make that change, I'll be able to bump up well, first, a little context. I tried increasing the hydration. I usually go for it's a comfortable about 75%. I tried going like 85. I was going crazy. And, I use regular bread flour instead of high gluten flour, and I think if I made the switch, the bread flour, it just can't handle a hydration that high, whereas something that like a high gluten flour can probably handle a hydration that high. Second reason, we'll take a look at the crumb. It still looks good. It's still good crumb. It's still good bread. It's still tasty. It's just not as gorgeous as last week's. All right, second reason, I had a little oopsie while I was forming the bread. There's if you're familiar with making a loaf, there's some things where you fold it up on itself, and there's a part where after I separated the dough into two, and I was folding it up, one of them became unfolded, and it was not good. I tried recovering, but it just didn't pan out, and I think that also had something to do with the less rise I got this week compared to last week's. But it's still good bread. If it may not be an absolute knockout like last week's, but it's still delicious. Great flavor, and still the crumb. It's still a good crumb. It's still good. I still eat it, of course. I only have the photo of the one loaf cut open because I gave the other loaf to my mom for Mother's Day. It makes a really great gift. People love it. So yeah, make your own bread. It's great. It's good for you. Make your own bread.